Good evening. Violence in sports has become increasingly controversial in recent years, especially in the NHL and NFL. Tonight, we discuss the issue further on the final edition of the Laker Connection Media Summit pregame show. Josh Newcomb, Larry Bergen, and Kim Abandondolo. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us, Mike.
Well, we're going to get right into this issue here. It's a pretty big issue. Violence in sports within the past couple of years gotten a little more controversial. So we'll start off with the NFL, perhaps the most controversial sports, both violent and kind of non-violent. So we'll start off with the NFL has kind of been a violent sport as of late, but we'll start with some of the rule changes that they've made to, I guess, quote-unquote, make the game safer. We saw a couple weeks ago a huge controversial call with the Jets and Patriots, the push rule. So we'll start off with Larry here. Larry, do you think that violence in sports, specifically NFL, is really a huge issue?
I think it's a huge issue right now, but I think it's becoming bigger than it already is, especially with the fact that the NFL, every other week you hear different players getting fined and suspended for these late hits, these head-to-head hits, and all that. And it's really becoming a main concern for these NFL players, especially the defensive players, because you had a couple of weeks ago, towards the beginning of the year, you had Ryan Clark from the Pittsburgh Steelers call out the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, saying that the NFL is very high on protecting these offensive players this year, which is really not the case. What the case really is to NFL's point, and from Roger Goodell's point, and the Players Association, is really to just keep these players safe. But according to some players, like Richard Sherman and like Ryan Clark, as I just said, it's really you can't really put a price on these players. They're definitely this is what they signed up for with these late hits, these concussions. So it's becoming more serious than it's put out to be, especially with these fines and suspensions being pulled out as of late.
Absolutely. Now, Josh, we'll move on to you here. Earlier this week, Brett Favre was actually questioned coming back as a quarterback for the St. Louis Rams, but said that he wouldn't come back because of the risk of further concussions and injuries. What do you have to say about that? Is he right? Does he have a point here?
Well, he is actually a very old man now. He's 44 years old. As a Packer fan, maybe we should put him off the field, keep him off the field. Him coming into the league right now would be pretty detrimental, I think. He would get thrown around. The guys are huge now. They're fighting, and they're kind of going at him if he was out in the field. So I think the big point would be to just stay off the field for Brett Favre. People are fast, and health of quarterbacks is a huge concern in the NFL, as we've been seeing recently.
Absolutely. Now, Kim, let me ask you kind of a different question here. Lately, there's been a lot of rule changes to try to, quote, make the game safer, including, taking out shots directly to the head. So, for me, Brandon Merriweather, earlier this week, player for the Redskins, came out and said, you know what? I've been getting fined week in and week out for hits to the head. Well, I guess now I'm going to have to start hitting guys and taking their knees out. So what comment do you have on that? Do you think these new rule changes are actually making the game safer? Or is it kind of deterring players to do something else to kind of substitute a head injury for maybe a knee injury?
You know, I definitely think that they have a point. They're trying to get rid of all the head injuries. And, I think that is a good thing. People should maybe be hitting with their shoulders more, aiming for some different places, because that head-on-head collision really causes some serious injuries. But the players are going to look for other ways to take people down. So that's also another risk that we have to look out for in the NFL.
That's a great point, too. Now, moving back to Larry here. Like we said lately, these rules coming in, but can you really blame a football player? I mean, you have a defender whose main job is essentially to basically go through and make the tackle. His job is to take out the ball carrier, and simply that is what he's paid to do. So is it fair to tell a guy that, hey, I know you're trying your best, I know you're trying to get the guy down, but you can't aim for this spot on his body. You have to go for somewhere a little bit different. Is there an advantage to the offensive players? Is this fair for the defender?
Well, obviously, it's definitely a advantage to the offensive player, because especially with these new rules coming out saying about defenseless receivers, defenseless players, and stuff like that. As Richard Sherman pointed out, there's no such thing as defenseless player. You sign the NFL contract, you're already putting up a defense right there, saying that you're willing to take these hits. But I used to play football. I played 11 years of football, and basically it's the defenders, they get taught how to tackle properly. These headshots, these low hits to the knee, that's not the proper way of tackling. The proper way of tackling is to size up your opponent, hit them in their torso, and bring them down to the ground. And you don't get a lot of time on the field when you're coming at a player full force like that. So this is the reason why these head-to-head hits, these helmet-to-knee hits are definitely coming around, is because the defenders just try to get the big hits out there, and that's not really safe as far as the offensive player is concerned. But really, the defensive players don't have enough time to think, so they're not trying to hit these offensive players like the way that they are. They're not doing it intentionally, but the offensive players do have a point with getting hit like that.
That's a good perspective. Now we're going to take a quick break here. Stay tuned for more of the Laker Connections Media Summit pregame show right here on WTOP 10.
Welcome to the fourth season of Oswego Sports Update. I'm Blaze Hill.
I'm Joe Manganello.
And I'm Adam Rupsick. Join us every Monday night at 11 for
Live
Sports
Action.
right here on WTOP 10.
Attention students and faculty. Avery Rental Properties is now renting for the next school year. Avery accommodates all group sizes, small or large. Avery Rental Properties. Make our house your home. 24-hour maintenance, garbage removal, snow removal, and off-street parking. Avery Rental Properties. 315-343-5005.
Every night before the show, me and the guys, we like to loosen up a little bit. Blue, 42, hike! Every now and then, Dan likes to take it a little too far. But hey, the show's all about competition, so we'll take it.
Stupid Dan with stupid football and stupid running.
The 2013 Louis B. O'Donnell Media Summit. Moderated by ESPN sports broadcaster and class of '87 Steve Levy. Coming to Waterman Theater November 6th. Stay connected by visiting mediasummit.org for updates.
Welcome back. Let's jump right back into our violence in sports issue here. We'll start off with Josh. Now, we were talking before the break about the NFL and if it's fair for kind of more of the offense or the defense now. There has been some rules, kind of known as, quote, the Tom Brady rule, if you will, with quarterbacks, guys being protected, receivers protected. Is there too much protection on the offensive side?
I don't think so. I think that the rules that have been regulated have been very good for football. I think player safety is number one in terms of health for NFL players. You look at their future. The future is a big point. They get concussions, they're getting concussions, they get 4 or 5 concussions. That's going to severely impair them for the rest of their lives. They're looking for their future. What happens after football in that case? I think that's a big concern. I think Roger Goodell has really taken that up in a huge stand. So I think when it comes to football players' safety, I think there can't be enough rules to really protect them.
Now, Kim, Josh brought up the point of life after football. Now, do we, these guys kind of know what they're getting into. They sign big contracts. They get scholarships to go to college to play football. They've been playing the game for a long time. So this new kind of, I don't want to say new, but all of the players from the 70s and 80s filing for a lawsuit against the NFL, more and more players being upset with how things are being treated in the NFL. Do they have a case here?
They do a little bit, but just like recently, because the rules have been changing, like it's changed the game. You can't go back in time and be like, oh, what if these rules were different back then? These hits are just going to keep happening, and these rules that they're enforcing are going to have to be, fulfilled by the players right now in the league.
Well, we can close off this issue here with Larry. Larry, final thoughts on the NFL. What's going on here?
Bottom line, basically, we all touched upon it today. There are these big head-to-head hits. helmet to knee hits. The bottom line is you can fine a player, you can suspend them all you want. The bottom line is it's just going to keep on happening no matter how many times you're throwing it. And the only thing that they can really do about it is just that they throw these rules out there, which is kind of the bad way to look at it. Because if you're going to keep on throwing more rules and suspensions, it's just going to draw fans away from the game. So, yeah.
John?
I think that player safety is very important right now. And as Larry went into it, it's extremely important. I think you saw about a couple months ago they had a huge agreement where they settled, I think it was $765 million to 18,000 former players that kind of were compensated for the pass and the hits. So deterring it is going to be a huge thing, but as Larry pointed out, it's going to be hard to completely stop because let's look at it. Hits are huge in football. It's going to happen.
Now, do you think, I'll ask Kim this question, do you think it's right to necessarily change the game to make it safer?
You know what? I don't know if the players are necessarily going to like that because that's changing how they've, been playing the game their whole entire lives. And the fans, they come out to see this really intense game with like these hits that they actually enjoy watching. They enjoy seeing players go out there and give it their all. So, it is going to change it a little bit.
All right, now we're gonna move on to another issue here. Moving to the National Hockey League, the NHL, not allowed to fight in college athletics. Kind of everybody knows that. But moving on to the NHL, you obviously can fight there. Should fighting be taken away out of the NHL?
Absolutely not. And I'm gonna say that for one reason only, because you have the diehard, passionate hockey fans out there that do watch the game for the actual sport itself. But then you have some hockey fans out there that just I want to watch the game because of the fights. It's bad to look at that, but that's how some fans think. It's kind of like with NASCAR. Some fans looking for crashes. I'm not speaking for those fans, and I'm not one of those fans itself. But unfortunately, people do think like that. But you saw NHL definitely bringing out those rules this year with you're not allowed to take off your helmet or your team will get penalized for it. That's definitely a way to break away from the fighting aspect of it, but I don't think fighting is going to be taken out of that sport in general.
Now, Josh, do you think that not having fighting in college athletics or college hockey, to be specific, do you think that's a deterrent for when players get out of college to prevent fighting in the NHL because they've really haven't had much experience, or do you think it's kind of the other way around? The second they leave the league, they're ready to drop the gloves.
Well, I think that as college students, we all want to see college fighting happen, but I think it's a huge point to not allow it in college athletics. But going to the NHL, they can fight. And it looks like them. We watch games up here in Oswego. They want to fight. They want to drop the gloves up here, but they can't. They'll be suspended. They'll be kicked out of the game. So I think when they come out of college, it's going to be, they want to drop the gloves. They want to fight. And, I'm totally for fighting in the NHL. It brings in entertainment, and it's good for the sport.
Now, do you think, Kim, in the NHL, sometimes if you get involved with a fight, it's usually a 5-minute major, not usually a suspension, depending on the severity of the fight, if weapons were used. So do you think that there should be a either monetary penalty or a suspension if a player gets into a fight during a hockey game?
For one fight, I don't know if that would be too bad because, like they were saying, everybody is actually, going out to see hockey for fighting, or at least some fans are, And I'm an Islanders fan myself, and we don't get too many fans out there. So when there are fights, it brings more people, and, that's a big thing. So I definitely think that, fighting is a big part of the game.
I think another aspect of it, too, is you have guys whose specific jobs are to be enforcers. I mean, it's their job to go out, if the momentum is down, to go out and just start fighting somebody. I know in my own personal experience watching Binghamton Senators hockey in my hometown of Binghamton, New York, Jeremy Yablonski, former mixed martial arts fighter, turned hockey player. So for that, to have a guy on the team who's actually had a background in martial arts fighting and then go out and join a hockey team to become, he kind of got a secondary career out of that. So for those guys, do you think that it's kind of taking a job away from a guy whose job it is to strictly be an enforcer?
You definitely have those characters out there. Like years ago, the Ranger fans had Sean Avery, which basically his main objective on the ice was to basically be a goon. And we all seen the Mighty Ducks. We saw how that turned out. But it definitely takes away from it takes a role from a all balanced hockey player. It's kind of like in the NBA, in my opinion, with Steve Novak, who used to play for the New York Knicks. All he was good for was 3-point shooting. and then everything else, he was just like, But but anything else, like as Kim pointed out, as she is an Islander fan, I'm an Islander fan myself. My favorite player of all time is Clark Gillies, and he was a goon, but he was also a great scorer. So if you have players in the NHL that are just for that purpose, there's not really that much value for them out there.
Now, quickly before we go to break here, just a final thoughts on fighting in hockey. We'll start with Josh.
I mean, I'm all for it. Hockey is extremely important for the sport. As Larry was saying, you have those instigators, and they're not going to be team captains. They're not going to be their best players on the ice, but they're there to offer support for your teammates, get into a fight, get into a victory, and so they can kind of build the momentum for their fellow team. So hockey, fights, keep it up.
Good.
And fighting sometimes can distract players from the game. So if a fight happens with other team, they get really rallied up, and then the other home team takes that advantage and scores a goal. That's a real big part of the game too.
Absolutely, that's a great point to end on. We're going to take a quick break here. When we return, we'll recap action from around Oswego State Athletics. This is the Media Summit pregame show right here on WTOP 10.
Great job. Great job.
Attention students and faculty. Avery Rental Properties is now renting for the next school year. Avery accommodates all group sizes, small or large. Avery Rental Properties. Make our house your home. 24-hour maintenance, garbage removal, snow removal, and off-street parking. Avery Rental Properties. 315-343-5005.
The 2013 Louis B. O'Donnell Media Summit. Moderated by ESPN sports broadcaster and class of '87 Steve Levy. Coming to Waterman Theater November 6th. Stay connected by visiting MediaSummit.org for updates.
I took a trip to Elkhart, Indiana today. Elkhart's a place that has lost jobs faster than anywhere else in America. The people who've lost them have no idea what to do or who to turn to. In fact, local TV stations have started running public service announcements that tell people where to find food banks, even as the food banks don't have enough to meet the demand.
Stop. What's she doing? She was a passenger, so I was deboned on the passenger side.
We just had some wine. I wasn't even drunk, I was just buzzed.
What? You were just buzzed? Well, sir, you didn't tell us that. In that case, she's just fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Really?
No, not really.
Buzz driving. Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Welcome back. This is the Laker Connections Media Summit pregame show on WTOP 10. Let's now take an in-depth look at highlights around Oswego State athletics. First, tomorrow the Oswego State men's hockey team will open their season against Fredonia. As you can see here, the Lakers are hard at work at practice. This week, the Lakers have strong emphasis on their special teams, looking to go past Fredonia and Buffalo State. Captain David Titanic will look to lead the Lakers to victory tomorrow at 7 p.m. against 7 p.m. against Fredonia, and Saturday at 7 p.m. against Buffalo State in the Campus Center Ice Arena. Tickets are still available at the Campus Center box office. The Lakers women's volleyball team is all finished up with SUNYAC play this year as they finished with a 1-2 record this weekend. After falling to New Paltz on Friday night, Brockport knocked off Oswego in 4 sets on Saturday before closing out the weekend with a loss to Buffalo State. Oswego finished with the year with an overall record of 2-7 in SUNYAC play, and they now sit at 19-13 overall for the season. They will next return home to Oswego State. They will return home next week to host the Oswego State Triangular with matchups against Cayuga and Wells this Saturday. Unfortunately for the Oswego State men's soccer team, they were unable to pick up a victory this season with a 5-0 loss to Cortland on Senior Day last Saturday. Cortland notched 2 goals in the first half and 3 in the second to handily knock off Oswego State, who finishes the year with a record of 0-10-5 with an 0-5-4 mark in SUNYAC play. The highlight of the season for Oswego remains a 0-0 draw with nationally ranked Brockport on October 18th. Well, the Lakers women's soccer team, however, is now gearing up for the SUNYAC playoffs for the first time in over a decade. Despite falling to Cortland 5-1 on Saturday, Oswego has earned the number 5 seed in the SUNYAC tournament. This is the first time they will have qualified for the event since 2002. Oswego will begin their quest for a SUNYAC championship Saturday as they travel to Brockport, to face the Golden Eagles in the quarterfinal matchup. Well, the season is over for the Lakers field hockey team as they fall to Oneonta 3-0 on Saturday to finish their year. Oswego finished the season with a record of 5-9 overall and 1-5 in SUNYAC conference play. Rachel Johnston finishes the season as the leading goal scorer for OSU with 5 goals this year, and Ashley Fiorelli was the leading point scorer overall with 14. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up, we'll have a very special guest to talk to. Stay tuned. You're watching the Laker Connections Media Summit pregame show on WTOP 10.
Honey, the credit fairy doesn't exist.
What?
It's make-believe. Nobody left anything under your pillow.
If there's no credit fairy, then we'll make our credit score go up.
We will, by doing things like paying our bills on time.
There's no magic to improving your credit, but there's help, and it's free. Go to creditfairy.org.
What?
Down 70-35, and the Cougars were getting smoked like a cheap cigar.
Attention students and faculty. Avery Rental Properties is now renting for the next school year. Avery accommodates all group sizes, small or large. Avery Rental Properties. Make our house your home. 24-hour maintenance, garbage removal, snow removal, and off-street parking. Avery Rental Properties. 315-343-5005.
The 2013 Louis B. O'Donnell Media Summit. Moderated by ESPN sports broadcaster and class of '87 Steve Levy. Coming to Waterman Theater November 6th. Stay connected by visiting MediaSummit.org for updates.
Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. Well, we're back here. We are waiting for Louis Carpel, graduate of SUNY Oswego in 2012. He is the youngest career connector at this year's Media Summit and the former general manager right here at WTOP. He is currently the photographer at CNY Central, the Syracuse, NBC, CBS, and CW affiliates, where he worked as a master control operator both semesters of his senior year. Louis had a long history with the Media Summit. He was the first student director of the live broadcast and intern for the event as well. Louis has also tried to attend every summit since his graduation. So now joining us live from Syracuse is Louis Carpel, 2012 Oswego graduate. Thank you very much for joining us, Louis. You there with us? Looks like we're having a little trouble connecting to Louis, but I guess some
I'm reading your lips. It looks like you're trying to talk to me, but all I hear is hiss. In typical WTOP fashion, we're having technical difficulties.
Looks like we're having.
Give me a thumbs up if I'm right. Yeah, I thought so.
Having some trouble, so we'll just kind of briefly outline this year's event.
Now it's getting a little better. I can hear something.
It's the 9th annual Media Summit.
Very hissy, though.
Take place in, at Waterman Theater. The panel discussion will take place at 3 p.m. The Lucarelli class of 77 for Oswego will be moderating the event. Panelists include Steve Levy of ESPN and Sports Center, Donna Goldsmith, the former COO of World Wrestling Entertainment, Jay Bieberman. We have some great people coming for us this year. John Kutchko as well, another local face here for Oswego. So it's going to be a really great event. If you're interested in coming out, it is free. The cost is free for all students, as well as you'll be able to We'll be able to connect with these panelists and career connectors throughout the day. They'll be going into classrooms, including Rich Hall, Lanigan Hall. They'll be there to hear you guys. I know for a fact I take Com 100. Steve Levy will be in that class talking to those students. There's also Wake Up with Steve and Lou from 8 to 9 a.m. So if you're interested in seeing Lou Borelli and Steve Levy talk about the industry, a little wake-up breakfast spectacular. I know it's at 8 o'clock. That might be a little bit early for you guys, but it's going to be an absolute terrific event. Again, the 9th annual event commemorating the memory of Dr. Lewis B. O'Donnell. This event was started, like I said, 9 years ago, taking place in the Waterman Theater. Looks like we're still trying to get in contact with Lewis. So I know from personal experience, last year's Media Summit was a great event. Last year's theme was news. We had Garrett Utley. We had a couple other big panelists. And looks like we have Lewis here. Lewis, can you hear us? Are you there, Lewis? And it looks like we might still be having some technical issues here.
It's not really working very well, but you want me to talk about my history and what I've done. So I did some stuff at WTOP. I was a general manager and chief engineer for a while. Then I got a part-time job at Channel 3 down in Syracuse, and eventually that turned into a full-time job. And now I have the title of multimedia journalist or photojournalist. So I'm a camera guy, glorified camera guy, if you will. Get to go to a lot of different events and see a lot of different things in the community. And I had the opportunity to travel a little bit. I covered Hurricane Sandy from Battery Park in New York City. I went to Boston to cover the aftermath of the bombings that went on there. And it's been a great experience so far. And I got to say, all my experiences at WTOP really laid a solid groundwork and foundation for what I'm doing now.
Well, you can see, WTOP having the students help
out.
Just
to let you know, I see your lips moving, but I don't know what you're saying. So unless someone transcribes it into this mess that I have going here, I won't know what's going on.
Now, kind of an interesting fact about Lewis here, his claim to fame. First of all, he's the youngest career connector here. He graduated in 2012, one of the youngest members of the Career Connectors team this year for the summit. Also, actually saved a falling transmitter from falling into a river. So that was kind of a mini claim to fame. But like you said, talking about WTOP, the thing is we put on a live stream broadcast that's run through WNYO, it's run through WTOP, and the best part is it's a completely all student run. We have student event directors, Janelle Francisco, Marissa Sarbach in charge of coordinating the entire event. It's really just an important part for this media summit, not only being able to invite these people onto our campus to discuss. It's not an issue to discuss these types of things. So you should come out to the Dr. Lewis B. O'Donnell Media Summit, the 9th annual event at Waterman Theater. The panel discussion will take place at 3 p.m. That will do it for us here at the Laker Connections pregame show. I'm Mike Tanzini. Next week we'll return to original format for Laker Connections. Thank you for joining us, and happy Halloween. Good night.
Really?
Yeah, it's totally gay. You really shouldn't say that.
Say what?
Well, say that something's gay when you mean it's bad. It's insulting. What if every time something was bad, everybody said, "Oh, that's so girl wearing a skirt as a top"?
Oh, you are.
Those are cute jeans, though. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Attention students and faculty. Avery Rental Properties is now renting for the next school year. Avery accommodates all group sizes, small or large. Avery Rental Properties. Make our house your home. 24-hour maintenance, garbage removal, snow removal, and off-street parking. Avery Rental Properties. 315-343-5005.
Got a good thing going, I wanna see it end. Oh, no, no, no.
Hi, we're Real Big Fish.
And you're watching WTOP 10.
Like the number.
Hey guys, this is my teenage friend Rachel. She's cool. Hey.
Hey, could you watch the road?
Hey, could you watch the road?
Okay. All right, well, if we die in a car crash, I want to donate my eyes to my neighbor, Gary. He has a boat, and he sails all around the world. I would love to see that. I don't know if he actually needs eyes, but who would turn on a free pair of eyes, right? Who's that rich?